Hey everybody, it's Thursday night. It means it's time for Shop Talk. I'm Josh Olive with Haven Comics, and we've got an awesome show in store for you, so stick around. Hey everybody, we've got a really great night in store, and we've got some awesome things to talk about. So, no further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring on Alan. What's up, Alan?
Certified badass.
It's just that night.
Is that describing you?
Well, some nights. I mean, I'm feeling a little feisty tonight. I got plans this weekend. Before we get started, somebody actually asked me about this earlier today, and I wanted to hit it just for 2 brief seconds.
Yeah.
Yes, Werewolf by Night that just recently come out is friggin' awesome. But you're not really and truly getting too much with the red band. I'm still trying to figure out the red band.
I could not agree more.
I've seen far worse on an episode of Big City Greens on the Disney Channel.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and bring on our guest because we have an awesome guest tonight, and we want to take advantage of every minute that we can with him. We've got the one, the only, Mr. Josh Blaylock. How you doing, sir?
Hello. Hey, man. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, he gets applause. I see. That's there you go. That's that all. For anybody who doesn't know, we had Josh on before, but it's been a hot minute. That was wow, we got a droid coming in hot.
Uh-oh. Really, I didn't realize it was up that loud. My bad.
Yeah, where's that coming from?
Is that your phone?
Yeah,
that's so.
Go ahead, tell him the story.
I gotta get that ringtone.
Well, I used to have Pac-Man dying. Every time I got a text message, all you heard was Pac-Man dying. It got on my wife's nerves, so naturally I had to go find something that was even more annoying. So now any type of notification is the Jetsons car, and I will keep it blasting so I can hear it on the opposite end of the house. So yeah, it's at the end of the day, after 33 years together, it's no longer about happiness. It's about how miserable I can make her. So,
her revenge is going to be Jane Jetson and your money.
Well, I told her
the wallet and then the wallet.
That's
well,
right.
I told her one time the first 20 years it was all about her and love and romance. The next 20 years it's all about me and revenge.
And he's still alive.
And I'm still alive.
Which is
at least for one more night.
Shock to us all. But we have had Josh on before. The last time was before his book Ark World came out, which was a really cool book, kind of alternate history, lots of anthropology, just stuff that we went down a long rabbit hole because he and I are interested in a lot of the same stuff. But really, really cool, fantastic book. And so that people can kind of gauge where you're at. In 1995, G.I. Joe, the series at Marvel, was canceled, ran out of gas, and a few years later, 2001? Is that right? Somewhere there, 2000, 2001?
Yeah, I think they ended in 94, and then September 2001, we launched.
Yeah. And we had just opened our store in April of 2001. So the timing was good for us. But Josh says, you know what? I like G.I. Joe. I want to bring G.I. Joe back. And he got the license to publish G.I. Joe. And he came back with a whole different vision for G.I. Joe and the world and how it worked and the characters, while still being true to the spirit of the characters, which is one of the hard things to do, I would imagine, to transplant them and put them somewhere else, while still maintaining the spirit of each character, right? So you've got a really long history with G.I. Joe. And it's clearly something you're passionate about and you believe in, or you wouldn't have done that.
Yeah. No, like all y'all, I grew up with it as a kid and loved it. And then, as time went on, I realized, I had more of a encyclopedia for that burned in my brain versus other properties and stories, and had a clear vision on how I would bring it back. A lot of that came from, sitting around with friends in high school asking ourselves, like, why won't they bring that back? And also I had gotten some opportunities to play a part in bringing like 80s pop culture like memorabilia back through t-shirts and stickers and apparel and stuff in the very end of the 90s, which kind of trained me to be able to go after this license. So yeah, that was, I thought, we need to update it for 2001, which is different than how you'd update it now, and pick up where it left off with the Marvel comics, but bring in some elements of the cartoon, some vibes from the cartoon that really resonated with people on a large scale, like Shipwreck being more of a personality, like, things like
the
that.
Shipwreck cover girl relationship really took off there, and they became a favorite for a lot of folks.
Yeah, and like, not changing the continuity from the comic books, but, adding little elements like that. And so I handpicked who the first team would be, redesigned all the characters, created some characters from scratch, then also brought in Steve Kurth to help with a couple different character things. Like he created the new Dreadnoks logo.
Which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, I it's funny. So Steve, we'll get into this later with the Disavowed, but Steve did an awesome cover piece for it. And I asked him, I said, you know what? I cannot remember. Did I come up with that Dreadnoks logo or did you? And right away he goes, I did, because I remember that the second I sent it to you, you went, God damn, why didn't I think about that? So Steve came up with it after I had like kind of flushed out like Zartan and Zanya and all that stuff. And I was more focused on like, I do have a lot of biker side of the family and knew enough about that to try to like flesh out some more depth to how the Dreadnoks operate. And this is all before Sons of Anarchy really went into all that, now everybody just knows that stuff. But I was like, man, the Dreadnoks really need like a better symbol, they never had their own insignia. And Steve just did that super like perfect thing. I still like that the best. I like that better than the skull with the knife through it.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's become the de facto symbol. I mean, it's the one everyone uses. I want to say the toy line even had it on one of the earlier packages for maybe Zarana figure. Although why the rest of the
yeah. So this is Zanya. It's the only toy they made of her, but she's got the symbol on her shirt there.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that Zanzibar there on the end?
If that's taking up too much space, if that's taking up too much space at your house, I would be more than happy to store it for you at my house. And I'll be
happy to send it to you. Shipping price is $500. I'll be happy to ship it.
Well, you know
shipping's gotten real expensive these days.
I think we can strike a deal because I'll waive my normal storage fees just for you.
That's awesome. Oh man. But long story short, I mean, you've got a long history with G.I. Joe. Your run with the G.I. Joe books, you had Devil's Due, Image. There was all these different things that went on. I want to say I met you in Atlanta Comic-Con like 2004. Oh, wow. Somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, man, that would have been, or maybe 03.
Might have been 3, yeah.
Yeah. We have a shirt from 03. So I say 03 because we had a tour shirt. It was Weapons of Mass Distraction. That's when George Bush was all pushing like Weapons of Mass Destruction, and then so we did Mass Distraction, and we had like all the tour dates on the back, and that was one of them. And I can't remember if I ever went back to Atlanta for another con, but that was that might have been a Joe Con.
No, it wasn't a Joe Con. I know that because some of the other
Wizard
folks
show,
that
maybe?
were there. It was before Wizard took over all the shows. I want to say it was just called Atlanta Comic Con. It was at the Sugarloaf Parkway Center over there on I-85.
Either way, we're old.
Yeah, no doubt. Mike Mignola was at that show.
Oh, cool.
And that's how I learned I was saying his name wrong the whole time. He made it very clear. I was like, I'm so sorry. I've only ever seen it in print. I never heard anybody say it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But no, fantastic show. You did a Storm Shadow sketch for me. Back in the day, which I was very excited. And now I have it up at next to my Larry Hama Storm Shadow sketch.
It's good company.
It's not bad. It's not bad. It's like my two favorite G.I. Joe writers right there out of the gate. But things go as things go with giant companies like Hasbro, and you ended up losing the license to G.I. Joe at some point. And as I understand it, kind of the same way that IDW just lost the license to Skybound. Was Hasbro was like, we're gonna do this now, and there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
But you
know, it's just how those. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, we just did for like 7 years. I do think there was a more like documentary worthy drama behind like the politics at Hasbro and why when we lost.
I 100% believe that.
Like they were doing all kinds of things, like one guy wanted to buy Dreamwave and had something to do with us losing it, and then the movie was going to come out, and like they got crazy there about stuff. But so yeah, like, but it's crazy though. I mean, we did it for 7 years, published a couple hundred books. So when people go back now to look, because it's all pre-social media, a lot of people who are discovering it now don't realize they think we were like a little blip. They don't realize like, no, this was it for almost a decade. So they kind of get overwhelmed with how much content we had. And then IDW though, having it for 13 or 14 years, longer than I had it or Marvel had it, you know, it is also pretty wild. So it's crazy to think I haven't even touched one of those books in 14 years.
That is crazy to think.
Now, when you get a property like G.I. Joe, does it come with like a list of do's and don'ts? You know, are they pretty hardcore on what you can and cannot do? Or is it just
that's what I expected. That's what you'd expect, right? It's kind of more like, well, because even though I was very young, I just kind of fell into a weird set of circumstances and things I'd gotten to do where I knew what a professional licensing situation was normally like. And I came in expecting the list of do's and don'ts. Expected mom and dad to give me the rules so I wouldn't get in trouble, so I could decide when I wanted to break the rules. And instead, there's no rules, and mom and dad just decide when they're going to scream at you for something. Like, that's kind of what it was like, because in the licensing department really wasn't like, I had the feeling, and it was kind of like had been a whole different thing, you know, in the 80s, and they were creating all this stuff from scratch. But in the beginning at like 2001, there was standard licensing, you know, t-shirts and little tchotchkes and stuff like that, where there wasn't stuff that was making new fictional content, you know, that wasn't coming directly from the main hub. So, you know, there was a lack of awareness of who the characters were. What, you know, there was still like battles in between in the company about like how much you wanted to bring back the 80s versus how much you wanted to try to bring back the 12-inch kind of vibe. It was a weird time. So we were seen as these kids that were just fanboys that wanted to mess with everything, and like we kind of had to keep our head low and just try to get the stuff out and not do stuff that made fans want to kill us. So like I've kind of, I don't want to bore people if they've listened to this stuff before, because I've gone on a long time about all that. But yeah, you know, I would deal with certain things. I'd have to pick battles and fight, because I was like, man, if this betrays the character, if I do this, the fans are going to think that I'm the one messing it up. and we've just got to make it happen. So and then things, they finally leveled off for a few years. They were good, and then it got real crazy again leading up to the movie. When there was even the potential the movie was going to happen, and then once it was really going to happen, we started really getting hammered with lots of questions like, what were even our capabilities as a company, with like a total lack of awareness that we had been there to support every attempted failed toy launch that was done. We had been there to support, we had everything in all of the bookstores. We had done newsstand, which no one even did newsstand anymore then. We did newsstand. We did all kinds of stuff. And we were also separately handling Dungeons and Dragons, and we were handling, had done the super successful Transformers crossovers that went on for 4 series.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like properties like Family Guy, which was one of the hottest cartoons on the planet at the time. A bunch of other stuff.
We had those penguins too, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, the penguins go way back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know. It is what that's just how that shit goes. And when you're been an entrepreneur your whole life, sometimes it's hard to understand what's going on in like a larger corporate setting where people are just their employees and they're vying for stuff, or they didn't grow up with the property, and they felt much safer, I think, handing it over to this. Not only was IDW full of more like seasoned corporate people, they had super deep pockets that came in. They had just gotten investors not long before that. A lot of investors,
yep.
And I'm pretty sure a really, really big check was written to to make it official. So, but yeah.
Well, you're not alone on the working with Hasbro front. We had a friend of ours used to be a customer at the shop. Actually, worked for. He was on the My Little Pony comic, and the comic was coming out at the same time as the cartoon. And they would do something where they would have the ponies do something in the comic, and the Hasbro people would be like, no, you can't have them do that. They would never do that. That's just a complete violation of the character. And they're like, right here in the cartoon, he does it on this episode and this episode and this episode. And they're like, well, you still can't do it because I personally don't want you to do it. They're like,
yeah,
what are you doing? Just a nightmare.
Yeah, you deal with that. And then we had our champions there for sure. And most of them went on to do they also like Josh Izzo was one of our main guys that really fought for us. And now, he runs like half, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but he like runs half of everything for Jim Cameron. Like he runs all the merchandising and development for James Cameron's, for Avatar and all that stuff. So like, there were good people there. And there were also people that had just worked there for years and years and years, and they were not trying to ruffle any feathers, but they would quietly fight for you. And then there were people who were just terrors.
I believe all of that.
And there was one guy at the very end. There was this story editor who just started fighting, the ambiguity of the morality of the characters. He hated all of it. It's like good guys are good, bad guys are bad, and I was like, that was where it's like, man, you're going to completely have me violating what Zartan does, what Duster does, what Storm Shadow does, with their wavering back and forth between being noble or good and bad, and these fans are going to skewer me and think that I did this. So when that happens, that's your job. You got to write around it. You just have to write something doesn't fit. So it's but I mean, every single thing we did almost at the time, over half the books we did were licensed. So that was what I think I'll always be proud of is we're a bunch of kids, honestly, with one of the hardest like publishing setups in all of comic books. Like so many licensed titles with so many huge brands, every single one of them with their own department that had to, we had to wait for approval. So it made our publishing schedules even harder for everything. And we got everything out on time. I mean, everyone busted their asses and got books out. Like I don't get stuff on time like that now. Like
Oh, that
we
sure
really
was
did
that
that,
was a
and
big differentiator for you
it,
guys too, because one of the things that came out of Image in the early going was they couldn't put out anything on time. When they first started, Image was notoriously late
yeah.
all the time about everything, and then when you guys came in, it was month after month after month, and it was solid like clockwork. Which that builds momentum, right? And when you go a long
Image
time
didn't want
without
us
doing
to.
something, you lose momentum.
Exactly. Yeah. And in the beginning, they didn't let us put it out monthly because
Yeah,
they didn't trust us. And I don't fault them for that because they didn't know me. They didn't know I was obsessive about getting it all out on time. So, but I mean, then once something's a hit and it sells 100,000 copies in the first printing, and then you can't put it out the next month. Then in hindsight, it's like, man, that first 8 issues probably cost us $400,000.
yeah,
But you don't know that until you're in the middle of it. And you know, so it was kind of a weird little bit of a contentious like vibe and Image at the time too. Like, I don't think they really wanted to do it. But kind of like agreed to do it, thinking to be okay, yeah, let's try it out. And then it was a hit. That was like weird, kind of a weird vibe, and I kind of played into like why I had to leave a couple years later. We were just growing so fast and everything, but um, I I mean, I really grew up idolizing the guys, all the guys that started Image. Those were my heroes. So, it was weird to leave at the times, but it's kind of funny that it's all back there now. They don't brand it as Image; it's all being branded as Skybound.
right.
But and Skybound is honestly doing a fantastic job, man. I really like what they're doing, and they relaunched it. They relaunched it in a way you do now, and they also relaunched it in a way that only Robert Kirkman could have done because he's like the only person with the clout to come in
Mm-hmm.
and do it. Like, to have it relaunched under a new property that's writing off your name and not even tell anyone it's G.I. Joe and Transformers and do the whole Void Rivals thing, because that's why there was excitement, get it up to 100,000 copies. And then they sneak in at the last minute with FOMO, tell everyone it's going to actually be this Energon universe thing. And that was brilliant. And, there was really probably nobody else that would have done that. And I'm just guessing he's probably locked in to be the showrunner and stuff on any TV. I'm just guessing that. So maybe we'll get some cool animation out of it. Maybe we'll get like a Invincible style GI Joe cartoon or something on Amazon Prime. That's my little
Oh, see,
fanboy
now don't get me excited
dream.
for that, because that would be amazing.
Or maybe, just maybe, we'll get a good movie.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
I'm known for my jokes.
I do apologize for. It's funny. I always joke that like they used very specific things that I wrote in the movies. So but also the way they used them or the things they chose to use, I would have never used in the movies.
Right.
So I'm always like,
Yeah.
hey, where's my paycheck? Also, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The nanomites. And then if you read, did you ever read a Rashikage Showdown?
Oh yeah.
I don't read that and watch the Snake Eyes movie.
Yeah.
It is half of the book. Like with the amulet and the sun goddess. I mean, it's the only time this is ever mentioned ever in G.I. Joe history is this whole concept and the sun goddess Amaterasu. So
except you wrote Snake Eyes, not some total strange dude.
Yeah, I didn't make a
Snake Eyes.
That was why they moved. I mean, I didn't have giant snakes in mind. And the magic wasn't revealed until like towards the very end that there might even possibly be any real magic to this. But yeah, man, what was up? I'm just putting on the fanboy hat. Like, he was just an asshole. He wasn't the good guy.
No,
in
like
Storm
who was
Shadow,
this guy? That ain't Snake Eyes.
Well, I was, believe it or not, I was fine with the movie up until the giant snakes. And there was one thing in the movie that I was watching and I was like, no, Snake Eyes wouldn't ride an electric motorcycle. I don't know what this shit is.
It's a Harley or nothing.
I'm going to finish the movie because I rented the movie.
Hey, man, he's a ninja. He's got to be sneaky and quiet.
See, that's true.
There's a difference between sneaky and quiet and...
But I think that all brings us very nicely to Um, you've got more stories in that family in that vein to tell. And what's the where were you when you had this epiphany that said, I'm going to do this book called The Disavowed, which comes out
Uh,
when?
we don't have an exact release date for it yet. We've got the pre-launch page set up for the crowdfunding. I've got Massive moving the crowdfunding over to Kickstarter because we have just a lot more momentum there, I think. But the pre-launch activity is still on BackerKit. If people aren't familiar with BackerKit, it's just like Kickstarter, and you can launch campaigns on there, but also you use it for your fulfillment software for Kickstarter. So it really allows you to ship everything out properly. So we're simultaneously doing a crowdfunding campaign and planning for the series launch into the stores. And I like Massive has some cool perks that they do where stretch goals on a campaign don't just unlock stuff for the direct backers, they unlock things for retailers.
As a fan and a retailer,
but there's no
I
exact date
approve
yet.
that message.
Early next year. The plan is early next year. We're like halfway into the series, the first mini series right now. Pop is drawing stuff, and we're waiting to get farther along because we don't want to solicit anything until it's
ready, until
there's more done. So it's been a little like we were getting our deal together with Massive and waiting for some of that stuff to happen. So it's been the full first issue was completely done and colored and everything. The second issue has been largely done and colored, and I'm just starting to work on the fourth issue right now. And we've got a bunch of covers already. We're working on getting more covers in. So it's all moving now, but we're really doing these. I'm doing this whole, round of press right now and promo to get people to pay attention, to start and waiting for it, and follow the Facebook page and follow the BackerKit pre-launch page and sign up for the email list. I've got one on doublesdo.net as well.
Now I got to tell you, I went and after San Diego Comic-Con, I jumped on and I'm looking at the options to get that issue there, and I'm going, gee, I don't know. And I ordered that metal cover, and I was like, that's pretty slick. That's pretty awesome. And then I got the email like, oh, oops, so sorry, we shouldn't have put that up. No metal cover for you. What do you want to do? How do you want us to take care of this? And I thought, well, okay, that sucks, but that's cool. And then yesterday, I get an email saying, we got it figured out. You're going to get your metal cover. And I'm like, nice. Sweet.
Awesome, man.
I know you.
They told me they were doing that, but you're the first person to tell me that you got the email, so that's great.
Oh yeah, somebody posted it on either GI Joe Uncensored page or on the Disavowed. They posted that they had gotten it too, and several other people popped in there to say they had gotten it.
But actually, I guess we're getting ahead of it for anyone that doesn't know what the hell we're talking about.
That's true, we are. I just got really excited.
Before we jump right into that, I was looking on BackerKit. Do you have to have an account to even view anything on there? I was trying to find a link so we could post it up so people would know what to follow.
Yeah. Let me see if let me look away from the screen all awkwardly here for a second and see if
you'll just look like you're having a deep thought.
I mean, if you ever notice, I'm always looking to my sides because I'm always looking at stuff to try to post up.
I'll put it in the chat here.
Sweet.
I don't know. I guess try that. That's the link. I don't know if you got to be logged in or not. I didn't think you did. Thought you only had to be logged in if you wanted to actually follow it.
All right. So
took me straight to it. Launches
in 28 days, 18 hours, 28 minutes. I am going to do that and do this and then do this.
But if you're a fan of G.I. Joe, if you're a fan of hard-hitting comics that like have heart and cool plots and a sense of fun all at the same time, I'm going to tell you right now, this is going to be a good book for you. You should read it. We're going to read it. We're going to talk about it.
The Disavowed is about the team, a top secret task force from the 1980s called the United Five, and their formation to stop a terrorist cult known as Komodo.
With a K.
Komodo was born out of a sort of a esoteric, new agey self-help group that started to embody like crazy abilities and technology over time. Started in the 70s, came in through the 80s, and rather than like a Midwest like Cobra kind of a origin, it was more like Sedona, Arizona, West Coast, new agey kind of origins. And the United Five is a quasi-corporate, quasi-government organization that's government funded, but they don't have to answer Freedom of Information Act requests. And there are a lot of they're not all completely military. There's some other characters brought in.
That sounds a little bit like the Foundation for Law and Government.
Sounds like reality.
Yeah, but, that was my favorite organization from Knight Rider back in the day, was the Foundation for Law and Government. Flag.
Oh, that was Knight Rider. Yeah.
Like, who are these people? What is this? But this sounds similar.
The easy marketing line for this is G.I. Joe meets the boys, because we've got this 80s team that is the government swears is no longer around anymore, but we learn about this through the eyes of the son of one of the members who's no longer around, and he finds out about this. He grows up obsessed with it. The internet comes along in the 90s, which allows him to find out all of the poorly kept secrets, and leads him down the path to also seek out becoming part of the team. And it leads us into the present day and what's going on now. So it's super crazy amped up action. It is mature reader's title. There's a lot of Easter eggs in there for the OG fans, but I also want a younger reader, like someone who's like 18 or 19, to be able to pick it up. And when they see the 80s flashbacks, they feel like it's from a different era, and it's supposed to be from a different era, and it's crazy. And there's stuff in there that happens that for some reason is not happening in the present. Kind of like when you're talking to your grandpa and he tells you some crazy story, that's, you're like, oh, you probably shouldn't have done that. But and he's like, well, it was a crazy time, I want to have, fun with that, play with the whole nostalgia inception we're living in now, where everything's coming back around for the second time.
Yep.
And just make some cool comics.
So when you say so you've revealed a couple things here. One is that the story is kind of being told in two parts, right? So you've got the modern day where the son is picked up and he's carrying on, but you also have flashbacks to the original group and missions that they ran, stuff like that.
Yeah, so it actually picks off anyone who's seen the Ash Can. It starts off in the late 90s, and we get a glimpse of something that leads us into we kind of jump into the big epic, like one of the last battles that they had. And one of the immediate things you'll see is there's laser guns, and they also hit targets, so people are just getting eviscerated. And then in the future, though, it's a little more grounded. So there's the whole story there and why that is. And I want to really. So you asked this gets back. I wanted to set up like what the book's about, but you talked about like the inspiration for it, and it's its own thing. By the second issue, you'll definitely know, like, okay, yeah, this is really, I guess what I can say is at its core, it's the Disavowed represents characters from both organizations who then went on to work together, and therefore became the Disavowed.
No, that's cool.
And it's not just about this versus this, and there's a whole lot more to it. And Um, but I do have to say, like, some of it came about through like just a couple years ago. I knew stuff was going to be changing with the license. I didn't know what was going to happen. I don't know if I'd be getting a phone call. I definitely didn't think I'd be brought in to like be involved in the project, but maybe there'd be something later on. That got me thinking, like, how I was always, we're talking about the movies just not really hitting right, and I always am concerned about any brand like this that I like going the way of what I call the Buck Rogers syndrome of it's really cool. I had posters of that kind of like B movie stuff in my, room as a kid and liked it, but it wasn't like actively collecting it. It wasn't really a thing anymore because too much time had passed. And it was harder. Actually, it'd be easier to bring Buck Rogers into the modern era now than it would be something like G.I. Joe, and holding on to all of its 80s-ness. Because there's so much sensitivity about so many aspects of the story now they're concerned with. So that led me to think how I would relaunch something like that is, well, either whether too much time has passed or there's too many concerns on a corporate level about like the military stuff and the guns and all that, why not just go the other way and own it? It was from the 80s. And now once you say there's a separation between that and one of the new characters that might come along, now you can even go crazier. And when we're in the 80s, it's nuts. And now anything that's considered problematic or too much, that's what we're leaning into. And meanwhile, there's still a fascination with 80s culture outside of these toys. You got stuff like Stranger Things and just references to all of this in movies because for all kinds of reasons. But
because it was a phenomenal era to be alive.
And let's be honest,
it's like a movie like Predator, for example. It's kind of where I feel like you may have Predator. So, okay, base concept. You've got this alien creature who hunts people, all this stuff, right? You have this whole opening scene with the villain where they just blow the heck up out of everything. Just destroy. There's explosions going off everywhere. Quintessential 1980s, right? More explosions, the better. And so when you say you're going to own those kind of elements, I feel like you're kind of leaning into that vibe. Is that accurate?
Oh, 100%. This is so much of this is me and my cousin when we're like 8 years old watching really inappropriate VHS action rental movies. We're eating our cereal and watching our cartoons in the morning, and then that's over, and then we're popping in, Ninja 3: The Domination, or popping in Cyborg or something that not only just has people getting eviscerated, but has boobs in it and everything else that we should not be watching.
Ninja 3, oh my God, I haven't heard that in so long.
Just such a steady diet of terrible action movies, Commando and Predator type movies, which were awesome, and bad ninja movies. I mean, that was definitely
the bad ninja movie reached its zenith in the 80s.
Now you love The Master. Everybody loved The Master when it came out.
Oh man, all the American Ninja movies, because there was a bunch of those.
Oh God, what's his name? Michael Dudikoff.
Yeah.
I saw somebody playing Jim Kata at a bar like about 6 months ago, and I was like, wait, because he was the gymnast, and all of his mind, he somehow would magically find things to do gymnastics on, so he could beat people up. Yeah, I mean,
oh wow,
we were anything like that. So yeah, that's.
He said that if it was problematic, they were leaning into it. He's mentioned bad ninja movies, boobs, and marksmen that can hit their targets. Josh, I need 2 copies.
I'm happy to oblige.
Well, part of it too is because people keep asking about the whole boys analogy, which that's just like a clean marketing line, but it's really.
Well, it's a brilliant marketing line too, because I mean it's very popular. It's got it leans into what it is too, right?
Yeah.
And if you take, I can very clearly see you take the sensibilities of G.I. Joe, you take the sensibilities of that, at least some aspects of them, and they put those together. I'm going to guess that you're not going like all in on the like super uncomfortable sexuality and stuff that they do in some of those episodes, but
there may be a
I don't
little
know.
less maybe a little less dongs in it.
Will there be any
Um,
starfish or squids?
Don't know about that yet.
Just check it.
There might be a Komodo.
Yeah, there might be. There is.
Speaking of which, I know you're
there is
into
a
this
sugar
kind of
glider.
stuff.
There's a sugar glider.
Oh, nice.
Doesn't have that kind of relationship with his owner.
I will say,
he just goes into battle he has no business being in.
Well, that sounds right. I mean, I've got G.I. Joe toys here that have, let's see, a wolf, a dog, a wild boar, a monkey, and a crocodile.
Yeah. You got to have a pet that has no business going into combat.
And eagles and parrots, right? What are they doing here?
Yeah.
Why would we drag them into our crap? But I did just actually read something the other day. I want to say it was on the CNN Science page or something. It's the kind of thing you would probably be interested in. It was specifically about Komodo dragons.
Oh yeah.
That they have discovered, because people are endlessly fascinated by these creatures. They have discovered that the iron in a Komodo's body is largely in their teeth, particularly the tips of their teeth. That, honest to God, real life Komodo dragons essentially have iron tipped fangs.
Wow.
Look it up.
That's how they eat anything.
That's part of how they tear it apart, right?
That's cool.
But dig into it.
Wow.
I think it was a CNN Science page. I may be wrong about that, but I think that was the source of that particular one. But if you Google it, I'm sure you can find it. But yeah, real life, honest to God, Komodo dragons have iron tipped teeth, essentially.
We might have to have a character named Iron Tooth.
I mean, the coolest thing, right? Make sure he looks like me.
Will do.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen for a second because I've got to ask a question. Wait a minute. Is that one? Which one am I looking for? Maybe
we
this
can't
is
answer that.
Yeah, this is it. So give us the rundown of who these people are, because I'm really digging this pick.
Yeah, man. Pop Mhan really crushed it on that one.
So in the middle we've got art. I'm so glad to see him on this book.
Yeah, man, his energy. I posted a page I just got today on Facebook, and I tagged you in it, or I tried to. I don't think it let me on the Disavowed fan group, but it's the character Chef, who just straight up goes into battle with kitchen knives as one of his arsenal.
You say chef, and I hear,
I
want to make love to your woman.
Now his catchphrase is, now we're cooking.
That's a quintessential 80s thing too, man. The dude's got a catchphrase. That's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Now we're cooking. That's great.
Except these guys might like snort a bunch of cocaine before they run into battle too, but I probably would too if I had to go up against a bunch of laser guns. Right here we're looking at some of the main lineup of Komodo. In the middle we've got our leader Lord Anan, who started the organization. We've got some random troops. We've got the Phantom Guard, the Phantom troops. We've got the Cerulean Guard. On the left there, we've got Highland and Fatal. On the right, we've got the Taxmen, who are actually the two ladies there, Maria and Mercy Cantillon. And we have Dr. Shaman. It was sort of like the problematic 80s casting of an Indian shaman. He's
like a cross between
the guy,
that and Dr. Mindbender. Is fantastic.
Yeah, he seems to have more knowledge of what Lord Anan's really doing than maybe even Lord Anan does. We've got Tasmania down there in the bottom right, and in the front we've got Sengoku.
Nice.
Now, and this is another shot that we have. If you want to, let me pull up that. And here we go.
The United Fivers.
So this is the cover. That any G.I. Joe fan who's been around for a while would recognize the homage that this cover is. So yeah, who are these guys?
Yeah,
I'm
first
gonna guess that.
that's Tim Seeley. That's Tim Seeley's cover homage to J. Scott Campbell, which
Yep.
all really is kind of inspired by Michael Golden. And then
Yep.
Tim had that was Tim's idea back there to have the almighty dollar as replacing the flag.
I
So we've
totally thought
got
that was a double-sided deal, like because you got the dollar doing that, but I also pictured it as all the '80s movies where people use a dollar bill to cut their cocaine.
oh, that might have, you know what, that might have been our idea all along. I'll have to say
I
that.
just thought that's what it
Um,
was because I'm like, it's so '80s. It's so
oh yeah, I
quintessentially
forgot.
80s.
So if we got Peaches in the front, we have Chef up there on the top
That's
left.
the big dude in the back.
Behind, way in the back is the Wall,
Okay.
who some people have started calling Gung Hogan.
Oh my god!
That's
That's my favorite.
The totally not familiar guy in the middle is Dane the Great. And we have on the right, we have Blue Sky and Stormy. Blue Sky is the jetpack expert, and that's his pet sugar glider. And then in the front there, we have the Mantis.
I just now noticed the sugar glider when you said something. That is awesome.
Tim, you know what? Tim gives that back to me, and he's like literally holding it out like a gun, and I'm like, "What is this? The book's not that silly." And he's like, I was like, "That's fine."
No, that's awesome. That is like that just sent the cover over the top right there.
I saw a thing
yeah,
recently
yeah.
of somebody who has a pet flying squirrel, and they put the video at this squirrel kind of comes flying down off the top of their refrigerator or whatever, and it lands on the ground and it hits a broom that's leaning against the wall, and the broom falls over and the squirrel like reorganizes the broom and then lays there like he's dead, like the broom fell on him and killed him. It's the funniest thing. Love that stuff.
Yeah, apparently they really bond to you, like especially when they're babies. They really get attached to people, and like guys, I know. My uncle knew some guy who had or my dad might have known him, like some biker guy would ride around with a little squirrel on the motorcycle, and it would just run into his jacket when it was time to go.
Nice.
Oh yeah, there you go. There's Chef. He's been working out since that Tim Seeley cover.
A little bit, yeah.
Chef has been eating all his protein.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume in this world, you chop that dude's arm off, then his arm is gone. He's not like regrowing that, or he might get a cybernetic one or something. But I assume that's the way this world works.
It's probably not. Yeah, probably not going to be a good day for that guy.
I don't know what language this is, but I figure you might.
Hadn't got a clue.
I get hello, Josh.
Right, I got that part.
Howdy.
Yeah, all the best people are comic nerds, and the really best people are named Josh. That's just how that goes.
Yeah. There's just so many of us now, though.
That's true. We've proliferated. You're not left-handed.
There's too many Josh Blaylock. I'm not, but there's too many Josh Blaylocks now. I liked when I was like one of the only ones. And then there was suddenly, apparently, other people named Blaylock can also name their kids Josh. Now they're everywhere.
Who said that was allowed? Yeah, not cool. So where were you when you had this epiphany, or how did this idea crystallize in your head that I'm going to put this thing together?
It was really thinking about like how would you relaunch a brand like this if you had to just bring it back if it was like a new idea, but you had to acknowledge the old thing and make it so that a younger person could pick it up and really enjoy it. And it's it's not enough. Like you can take anything and make it rated R. So you can do a really extreme version of G.I. Joe, not G.I. Joe Extreme, but you can do an extreme version of G.I. Joe.
Right.
It's just crazy violence and everything. But at a certain point, certain things the characters can't do would just be violating what makes those characters who they are. It just
becomes caricature at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too forced. So, but if you're doing an original thing, and it just kind of hit me like, no, the key is going backwards. Like, and just keep it in the 80s. And then if you that way, because there is the challenge, like you can't like take all these dudes like bare chested running into battle with giant mustaches and all this all the absurdity of so much of it, and the Cobra villains, and you can't make that stuff too serious or it doesn't work. And some of it really is just of its time. When you layer on top of that what made it, not just the military aspect, but like a lot of the dynamic of what they were doing, and kind of that whole 80s Reagan era vibes that it had, at a certain point it just doesn't feel like the same thing anymore. And that's part of the creative challenge of it, outside of the corporation having its own concerns about other things that they're worried about. So yeah, that kind of inspired it, I think. And which is like completely different than how I would relaunch like a G.I. Joe story if I was going to be doing it again, because I had a very clear idea on how you would, if you wanted me to come back and write it and actually make it sell like 50,000 copies and get excitement, it's got to sort of also be attached to the Devil's Due continuity and probably have all the right factors tied together to get the fans excited about that. So now I could have never predicted Kirkman's Skybound coming in and doing the whole Void Rivals thing, just because I could have never predicted anyone having the clout to be able to get Hasbro to do that.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, but that sort of inspired this, and then also just not, but now let's beyond that, just how the 80s nostalgia keeps going on, and that's where we get into some of the other themes that inspired this too. Like, one, these people won't stop collecting this stuff. I think it's a sort of shifted my thinking on it, that I'm not as worried now about worrying about fans aging out. If you're buying this stuff when you're 47 years old, you're probably going to be buying it when you're 60 years old. If you didn't stop buying it when you were 28 and you're still buying it in your 40s, you're probably going to be asking your grandkids when you're 72 to get you that Optimus Prime, like, homebot.
I'm gonna need you to take me down to the store.
Yeah. And then so what's fun about this is now I've got characters. Part of this is about like the core team, the one that works, that people keep coming back to, the one that people, the real team that never really changes, quite literally won't die. And that I don't want to give away too much, but that's part of sort of the story here. But also in the real world, people refusing to let go of power, not just in politics, but in corporate life and everything else. And like this trend of not letting go and letting the next generation take over in society is a theme that works perfectly in this. And just and then sort of the kind of that tying into how nostalgia can be weaponized nostalgia was sort of a joke, but it does sort of play into all of this too.
Well, it caught my attention. It's an easy tagline to remember, because it automatically gives me ideas of what it could be, right? I've got it, because the 80s just was this bizarre mishmash of futurist sci-fi, like Terminator, with sci-fi elements of real military kind of action with Predator. You've got the magical mysticism stuff of Big Trouble in Little China. And you've got all of this stuff all blending together, and then all the ninja movies. That stuff's all blending together in this huge pot, and we consumed all of it, right? So if you can take and kind of pull the best bits of that together into one book, that's a surefire hit to me.
I think we're kind of in a part. I don't know. I might change my mind on this, but I think we're kind of in a situation where part of what's cool about some of the stuff is that was in the 80s, which that's why Stranger Things is cool. Like it's like you don't go see the Lone Ranger and then or Zorro, and then be like, well, why is actually I take back on the Zorro thing, but go see the Lone Ranger or something like a Western, and then everyone they're trying to force it to be in like modern day, like
Right.
in modern day Las Vegas or something like. You can do takes on that, and you can have fun with that kind of thing. Like Sean Gordon Murphy just did a really awesome Zorro where it's literally in modern day, and this guy straight up just shows up like he's old school Zorro, and he's kind of nuts. He starts killing cartel guys, and they, that's part of the gag and the concept of that story. But yeah, so, but people go into, they want to see the characters in that environment, and then when you try to force them into a newer one, it doesn't work as much. If you are going to do it, I mean, you should still own that too. I think that's what is kind of coming back around now with the superheroes and stuff. They're kind of realizing, like, okay, it doesn't have to be so post-modern and serious, and everyone doesn't have to have a black leather version of their 80s costume. You can embrace the absurdity of some of it, but yeah, I think just what excuse to have some fun and also have no restrictions and no rules, and definitely throw in things that are gonna. There's a lot of modern stuff that I want to have fun with too. If you're dealing with a top secret group like this that deals with special technology, some current event things that might play into where actually it's really not what you think it is. You might think it's some other mysterious tech, but it actually just has to do with stuff they don't want to talk about from the 80s.
Now,
I like that idea.
When you're doing a book like this, and yes, you do want to lean into the nostalgia and all that, how much do you take from, say, like conspiracy theory? Because I could see where a group like the Disavowed could lean heavily into conspiracy theories that we've heard of, and how that would be fun also. I mean, are those even things that you consider when you're writing those stories?
Well, no, a whole part of the story about so Matthew is the character who we really sort of learn about this through. He kind of finds out he's a child of the 90s, so he's growing up getting access to early, message boards and trying to solve the mystery of, his father and what was going on back then. And it'd be kind of like if you heard you never knew your dad, but you knew he worked for the NSA or worked for Area 51 or something crazy. And they're like, well, there is no Area 51. But you're like, well, yeah, right. It's all over the internet. And they're like,
I have
stupid
Google
new
Earth,
internet,
it's right there.
that newfangled thing. Yeah. So I definitely, that's, I'm going to play with a lot of that. Also, so part of the thing with Komodo is Lord Anon. At some point, when things really changed, and the cult went from just like motivational stuff to just claiming he could channel with aliens, and which is a thing people do. You can look up YouTube videos. People say they're channeling and speaking. The Pleiadians are speaking through them, and the blah blah blah. There's
the Raelians and all that, yeah.
And but what if all of a sudden this person starts doing some crazy stuff that you can't really explain? And I like to say, think of it like Cobra meets the religion that rhymes with Shmology, and what if you put those together? I don't want him to come sue me. So
no, you wouldn't want that. I'm gonna take a guess here, and like the flashback elements of the story are gonna be real heavy action oriented in a lot of cases, and the more current, the more modern day element of it is gonna is the mystery of him like finding this information and putting the pieces together. Is that the way the story is going to build out?
Yeah, you really kind of nailed it, and that's sort of happened not as intentionally as when I thought at first. It's sort of what became necessary to tell the story, because part of the fun of doing something that's like an homage and satire and all that is you have archetypes and you don't have to explain it. People see it and they get it.
Yep.
You don't have to explain everything about the character for them to get enough of him to be that person to be in the scene. And because you want it to be fun, we want to throw in all this action, but if it was a brand new concept, like if you're doing Invincible or Watchmen or something, but there had never been a Justice League, then it doesn't work. So yeah, it allows you to do a lot of fun action stories, and you don't have to ever dig into the character. But that's a good time to bring up that one thing we're doing is treating this like it always did exist. So as far as the outside of the story, I'm considering like the Disavowed, the United Five, Komodo. These are not just like stories that existed since the 80s. This was a brand. This was a property that existed since the 80s, which means there was a fandom. We might unearth, file cards and toys and stories, and fans might not like our relaunch. Or people might more finally remember like the 2000s relaunch. So that's something that what I want to capture is, if you're picking up Joe and Transformers and Thundercats and all this stuff, and there's so much out there, you can get a lot of the same feels from this. Plus, they're way more fun and totally like gratuitous and violent and everything we can get away with in those books. And it's also though kind of relaxing. Like you don't have the pressure of having to collect all that stuff.
Now you said earlier
because there will be a
mini series, right? You said the first mini series or the first limited series. So is that your intention to release them as like a series of mini series, or like a mini series followed by an ongoing? What's your plan there?
I really want to do this for years. So Massive agreed to the 5 issues to start, and that sounds more than fair. But it's all based on response. I'm sure if we drop them, we sell like a ton of copies, we're gonna probably want to keep that going. So I have so many ideas for the characters, even though I just said, it's set up in a way where you can just throw them in the background and maybe just touch upon them later as an outside gag. I do have like an unnecessary amount of background for a lot of them. I think
I love that though, because that gives you. It's like when you're playing a role-playing game, right? You build out the characters, the NPCs, whatever, the locations where you are. You build all those things out, and you leave all those hooks there, and then you see what catches you and where the story wants to go, and you've got enough seeds planted that you can make your way through whichever direction it goes. Really cool.
And also, there's a lot of fun to be had too. And if an organization did exist like this and someone's still around and they're still active and kicking, like what are they doing now? That's a whole lot of fun to explore too. So including the bad guys.
Yeah, I love it. I love the structure idea, just because it appeals to me as the uncovering the mystery and then having those two stories kind of being told intertwined side by side to get us from point A to point B plot wise. I love that as a mechanic to do that. I think it's really effective when it's done right. And having read a lot of your comics, I think that it's in good hands to be done right. Really Thanks, looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great.
Thanks. Yeah, I wish you got a preview before we did the interview here. So I hope you don't read it and say like, I changed my mind. Take it all back.
I can already tell you I'm not going to do that. Like I said, I've read a lot of your comics, and I like your style. I like the way you do things. I like your thought processes. I like the way you put stories together. I like the way you build characters. I like that you have the ability to tell a wide range of stories. You're not just locked into, I can only tell this one kind of story. And that you have character growth and movement and all that. I dig it. And unless you've like really just phoned this one in, which I can't imagine you would, I think this is going to pick up and be the same.
Thanks, man. I guess with this one, the one thing I really am trying to be very consciously aware of is making sure we put in, you got to stop with the action and everything to make sure there are some really emotional things in it. and make sure that we do feel for some of the journeys of these characters, because there's not time to do the journey of all of them, which gets into I hope this goes on for years and years, because then you can't. A lot of times when you go back though and you watch your favorite, if you had how often do you go when you go back and rewatch old Joe cartoons or even read old superhero comics with big team books, and you might have had a character you really loved and you have so many stories in your head about them, but you realize, they were only in 3 episodes where they actually really did anything, or they were only in a few issues, and I just in my head built them up as something bigger. That's the challenges when you write a team book. A lot of times, certain people just have little moments, and then the fans sort of give them a life of their own after that.
Right, because some characters, the first time you ever saw Snake Eyes, right? He grabs your attention because you don't know who that guy is, and there's a mystery, and people like a mystery, right? They like a solvable mystery, or a mystery that's tantalizing. They don't like a painful mystery, or that's really just going to bug me if I don't find out. But you have a mystery who is this guy? It's part of what made Wolverine work for so long, was you didn't know his origin. You just got flashes of little bits and pieces every now and again, right? But you didn't know the origin. And I think Marvel made a really big mistake when they did origin and they revealed the whole thing, because now there's no mystery. So a lot of his mystique is gone. A lot of that.
It's almost something as simple as what does Cobra Commander look like?
Yeah.
I mean, how anticlimactic is it really if you ever reveal that? Okay, it's a dude.
Hey,
so that you've got to have, unless he was once a man.
There you go. But if you don't know Mark Spears, by the way, Josh, you really ought to get to know this dude. Phenomenal artist. He's been doing covers for DC and Image and some of these guys. And he's a local guy here in Huntsville. Although he's having a signing at my competition next week, so I'm not sure how I feel about that. It's all good, brother. It's all good. But yeah, he's got this goofy. I don't know how he does it, because his character work all looks really realistic and stuff. But he uses these color palettes that should not work together at all. Kind of like Dan Brereton. If you remember Dan Brereton, he would pull all those colors together, and you're like, "What are you doing with these colors? They don't make any sense." And yet, when you do it, they do. Mark is the same way. It's just these bright colors and pastels and stuff that you're like, that does not work at all, and yet it looks amazing. Mark does that.
Oh yeah, I have to check it out. That reminds me.
And he loves G.I. Joe too. I'm sure he would be happy to come and do something for you.
That reminds me, because speaking of the color palette being really unique, we got a Michael Golden cover.
Let's talk about that actually, because you
blew me away that I actually was able to get that.
Well, hang on a
second. You mentioned before you've got some. That's one of Mark's colors. That's not one of.
I see what you're talking about.
Crazy color.
How about that one?
I was thinking if you can see that Lobo cover he did on Action Comics or whatever, because that one's just insane.
Oh wow!
See, that doesn't make any sense. That shouldn't work. And yet, look at that. It's fantastic. He's got a Green Lantern book that just hit the shelves this week.
That's a great Lobo.
Oh yeah.
Was that from the Tim Seeley Superman crossover?
That was just this couple of months ago.
That's a new one. Okay.
Yeah, it was just
got the Superman napkin. Okay.
It was one of those 1 in 25 ratio variants that they did. But he's got his own book coming up from is it King Spot that's publishing it? I think it's King Spot.
I believe so.
Cool.
Called Monsters, and it's like the Universal Monsters book. Really cool. If you dig that kind of stuff, it's cool. But you've got a bevy of
Michael
former
Golden,
G.I. Joe
Dave
artists.
Dave Johnson, Steve Kurth, Tim Seeley, Adam Riches. and we're looking for more.
You got Gallant? You got him coming? Did I see that?
Who?
Gallant or Gallant, however you pronounce it.
No. Or maybe, I don't know. Massive is
But you
also
got
going to be
Michael
helping
Gold,
me.
dude. What a get that is. That's
Yeah, dude.
fantastic.
Yeah, I approached him because he did a cover for the very last issue of G.I. Joe we ever did, and his sketch was amazing, and then it completely got censored, and it became this like way different cover, way less exciting. So I wanted to have him recreate that big like wraparound thing, and then I got his modern day pricing, which was way different. I said, okay, well, how about just a simple cover? But I think that's what got him to want to do it, though. So, yeah,
Now, just out
that
of
was just
curiosity,
that was a coup.
why did it get censored? Out of curiosity.
Oh man, that's when our approvals started getting real crazy again. So towards like in the end of 07 into 08, you couldn't aim a gun at the reader. That was considered like too violent or something.
Are you
couldn't
kidding
have
me?
the gun. The guns couldn't fire too much.
It's a military paramilitary comic book. What are they talking about? And some of the best comic book covers of all time have been a gun aimed at the reader.
Yeah, it got weird, man.
Holy smokes, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I have a sketch. I still have the thumbnail. I found it of like what it was gonna look like, and then if you find the published version, you're like, what happened to this? I mean, if you don't know better, it's one of those things you don't know better. It still looks great, but if you saw the original, then you know.
Oh man, and there's probably a million instances where things like that happen.
Oh, all the time.
Where you have this awesome comic, and then some suit somewhere is like, no, can't do that. And so we end up with something that's watered down from what it should have been. That
happens way more than people think.
Oh. So I'm going to ask you the question, which I know you can't answer because no one ever can, but maybe you're the exception that proves the rule. On the Disavowed, do you have a character that you personally gravitate toward more? Notice I didn't say who's your favorite. Do you have one that you gravitate toward more, that you kind of find yourself pulled in that direction?
Not yet. I think it'll probably happen, but I think there's always like pieces of characters, right? So when I channel back to like the Matthew kid, I mean, even though he's younger than me, I want to really that I'm pulling from like being a kid, things like I remember doing and how we would play and stuff. So in those elements, that is him, but I didn't like spend my life searching for my father or some mystery or something like that. So that's not, I don't identify with that, but all of the fun I'm going to get into some of the fun kind of conspiracy stuff, kind of fun woo-woo stuff that I want to bring in to the sci-fi of some of the story here that I really can't say much about that, but that's
you can. We won't tell anybody.
But they're not really characters specifically,
See, somebody needs a secret.
I sprinkle myself all throughout.
Awesome.
Somebody needs a secret base that's in a pyramid in Antarctica.
Oh, good Lord. Get off this alien predator
nonsense. Nobody sees where my secret base is coming. I'm keeping that one close to the chest.
Josh, that's not just aliens versus predator. I mean, that's a conspiracy theory. Pyramids in Antarctica. It has been for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so see now I want to know where the
don't get me started on pyramids. I don't.
Or go back and read Ark World.
Yeah.
Oh, what do we got?
I don't know if the camera will pick this up.
Oh, you can kind of see it through the screen. Now that's cool.
Oh, it's a magnet.
Oh, rock on.
That is awesome.
You ever watch that Danny Jones podcast? speaking of crazy conspiracy stuff, watch the Danny Jones podcast. He has one of those, and I can take credit. I'm kind of why he has it because this guy George Howard from Cosmic Summit was on there, and George is the guy that works a lot with Randall Carlson and a lot of those people, and then Danny saw that he had one of those that I had given him as saying thanks for going to the event, and he said, "Where'd you get that?" So then he ended up getting one, and now it's on the show, and every episode it's behind him in the podcast.
You notice I have G.I. Joe comics and action figures behind me. That's what I got.
What is that disavowed that's behind you?
This was a poster I dropped. I took this to Joe Fest.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was. I was really adamant. Like, we've got to, even if we don't have anything to show hardly, we've got to reveal this at Joe Fest.
That's the perfect place to do it, because that's
and
where
not say anything about it. It's just got the names. It says no one knows what the hell a U5 was, which is the Ultimate 80s Task Force's return. You've been warned. It's got the logo with the blood splatter. It just says my name, Pop Mhan, and it's got Golden, Johnson, Kurth, Bridges, Steely, Sauer. Just to shout outs to Brian Sauer too. I should have mentioned him. Brian is really like a key figure in the whole fan community on the G.I. Joe side. He runs Codename Iowa out in Des Moines, and he's helped me navigate the toy side of it a lot more, where I needed to do a lot of catch up, because we've got some other aspirations we have for this, but there's a lot of cool stuff.
Are you saying that we
happening.
might get action figures?
I'm saying we've already got offers, so we're looking at what we may or may not do. The indie toy market is incredible right now, and the sculpting and the design and everything is like every bit as good as the big companies, if not better.
Yeah,
they take a long time to come out. You gotta be very careful about entering into that process. So we're not in any hurry. There's no deal done yet or anything, but yeah, I
just
think
so long as it includes
we were
the sugar glider. He's got to have the sugar glider with him. And if the sugar glider's not posable, there need to be two versions. One like the crouched up, and one like
Yeah.
Or what about
definitely.
Go old school and have like a little button on his back, and when you push the button, the sugar glider launches off of his hand.
I like that. Yes.
Yeah. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And you can mix up the chips on their audio thing, so you can have Duke saying, "Math is hard."
He actually leans over like this, exposes his O-ring, and then he rubber bands, shoots his sugar glider.
That's a great idea. What are you doing? Stop! That's obscene.
And then his O-ring breaks, and then you try to fix it with a rubber band, and then he's, for the rest of his life, he's O-ring drunk, just kind of like wobbling around.
Yep. Lord knows I've got a box full of guys who are like in bits and pieces because those O-rings are gone.
Okay, you're a huge nerd if you're at a Joe Fest and you see someone wobbling around and you say, that guy's O-ring drunk. Broken O-ring.
Yep, that is totally fair.
Okay, so to circle back to something you said a second ago, where's their base at? Just out of curiosity.
Nice
Somewhere
try.
You don't see coming.
Nice try.
I can't talk about it because it ties into a character who is. I want to do. I'm gonna have to like hold back on talking about this character, but
so there's a reveal.
People are either gonna be like, "What the hell is this?" or they're gonna love it. So,
but see, I can tell that you really want to talk about it, and I promise I won't tell anyone.
I'm gonna have to push it into like within by issue 4 or something. That's gonna have to happen.
Okay.
Oh, I just spoil it. It doesn't pop up yet.
That's all good.
That's the problem. I want to try to take my time to tell these stories, so I have to do stuff like that, because then that makes me I have to get out more than 5 issues, because I'm torturing myself not being able to get certain things in there right away.
Now, when you're planning something like this, and how far out do you plan? I mean, I know you kind of have to do issue by issue, but as far as the overall story in your head, how far out do you plan for something like that, or how far out are you already thinking?
Yeah, it's a lot of back and forth. I am kind of a really tedious, like, obsessive world builder where I to me, I do want to know all the aspects of the world and what's supposed to happen and what the rules are, and but I'm trying to not get too rigid with it on this. But I did create a timeline, so I've got a rough timeline that goes back to 1972 all the way to the present, so I could really get into, like, I really have to kind of have key things about, well, when did the cult start to form, when was the team formed, when was certain people join, because that it just it's too important not to have that when you're doing flashbacks and stuff. And then trying to manage, like, the pacing of, I kind of did that by creating this big battle in the end of the 80s, forces me to have to keep the story going at a certain pace in the years prior to that. So that's all loosely, noted. And but other than that, you kind of do a plot where you kind of know what you want the key ending to be, what the real mission is that's driving the team, that the title's all about, what they're trying to accomplish, and then decide which things are okay to let go to continue on to future stories and which really need to be wrapped up. But other than that, once I've got that kind of plan, then I just go through, and my writing process is, because I think it's just because I've always been an artist and I've really more of a storyteller who draws more than it's just being a traditional writer. I kind of write the way you sketch. Do like a write down, if it's 22 pages, write down 1 to 22. I kind of know the beginning, middle, and end, and I start jotting down, okay, now what's going to happen on each page. Real rough. And you kind of have a sense of, like, how much space it's going to take up with the art. And then if you've, a lot of times dialogue pops in your head or cool little scenes you just want to make sure you put in, and you'll try to find a spot for those. And then you start noodling around with that. And then it's kind of, then you throw your tantrum because your brain doesn't want to write or thinks it sucks. And you come back to it and start writing out more and block it out. And then you finally start doing the dialogue. And then it's sort of like watching a JPEG that's pixelated come together. That's my writing style.
Now, are you already, and this may not be a fair question, but I got to ask it anyway, because I'm kind of intrigued about stuff like this. During your writing process, are there characters that you're like, okay, I'm going to get the audience to really start liking this character, but what they don't know is I can't wait to kill this character permanently? I mean, because when the book
yeah, for sure, yeah.
I mean, you can kind of do whatever you want to do, and what's the repercussions of it? I mean, to me, I think it would be even better if, I'm sure I'm about to get hate from PETA, but what happens if the sugar glider gets shot in an episode? I mean, that would, I mean,
well, I definitely gotta have some momentum to torture people. I've got to do some stuff that make people, you gotta have some. Game of Thrones taught us, like, you gotta have some of these moments. Yeah, I'd say sometimes it's the other way. You'll plan to kill a character, and then you start liking them because now you almost, like, knowing they're gonna die, you start to develop them more, and then you're sad. You decide if you gotta stick with it or not. But because comic books are a huge team effort, I've tried to, like, get better about asking an artist. When you start working with an artist, it's like, hey, what do you love to draw? What do you hate to draw? Try to make sure you give them some good big money shot pages in case they're doing original art and they want to be able to sell stuff. Think about that. And then also just, hey, by the way, you've been doing this for a while. Any of these characters you hate drawing? Like, if you're at a moment where you got to kill a bunch of people or something and you haven't decided who, sometimes it's as simple as that. Hey, do you hate drawing any of these characters? Do you really like drawing any of them? I should do more of. And that's sort of like how the relationship works.
That's cool that you're collaborative that way, and you think about it in that way, because comics are really unique in that aspect. I think people have no idea how many people it takes to actually bring a comic book together. Um, and it's a lot of people working together just to get everything down on a page, and then to put all those pages together in order and get everything edited, proofed, making sure you're looking at continuity down the road, all those kind of things. It just takes a lot of people, and it's really cool that you're collaborative that way and you think about that proactively as you're going into it.
There's a great book too that I just got, not, I guess it's probably been 6 months ago now, but Shelley Bond, Philip and Shelley Bond, they're a famous couple in the comic industry. She ran Vertigo for many years. She wrote a book called Filth and Grammar, and she has another one too I haven't read, but it's amazing. It's like one of the only books like it that exists, if not the only. And it's about the whole editorial process and what it really takes to make a comic book. And it's also done with a lot of art and comics inside of it, in addition to the prose. Anybody that's looking at comic, I mean, this is the editor's version of like How to Draw the Marvel Way. Like, you got to add that to list of when you start getting comics, and you've got to look at How to Draw the Marvel Way. You've got to look at sequential art, comics sequential art by Scott McCloud, and you need to look at this book, Filth and Grammar. And if you want to be really crazy and publish your own stuff, read my book, How to Self-Publish Comics, not just create them.
There you go. So Mike is going to be in Tucson at a con next week, I'm guessing. Are you going to be?
Oh yeah, I'm going. Yeah, I'm a guest
there. You go, Mike.
I literally today I had to run all the boxes to FedEx so I could get them, make sure they get there in time.
Well, I will tell you right now, Josh, if you've got some of your pens and pencils and such, best bring them, because Mike is a dude who like gets art from everybody, and there you go. Now he might ask you to draw Baroness or Peaches or whomever.
Oh darn! Oh no, to draw.
Just terrible. I know that's rough. It might be Mercy
horrible.
Sparks, might be Hack Slash, whoever. But yeah, Mike is a huge patron of the arts, and he likes to help support artists, and he's an awesome dude. So yeah, he'll come find you, and he'll be like, dude, I'm gonna need you to draw me something.
Now, actually, that kind of brings me to another question. When you are getting ready to do a con, and you said you just shipped off the FedEx boxes, when you're still in. This is going to come out so bad, and I don't mean it to be. Since you're still in pretty much the beginning,
I'm already offended
of the disavowed. How do you determine how to market something like that at a con? You know what I mean? Because it's not like
right now it's a. I mean, we do have the ash cans. I might be able to bring a few. I'm trying to work out, making sure if I can pull that off, because they did a really low run, just for San Diego. But I'm there to talk about it, promote it. I'm gonna be doing the con anyway. I mean, really, I'll be there with a big Mercy Sparks presence. I've got the omnibus. For anyone that hasn't read that, Mercy Sparks, it's about a devil girl that works for heaven hunting rogue angels. She kind of does heaven's dirty work.
Told you, Mike, right up your alley, buddy.
Totally different, way different story than the Disavowed. But I've got these huge hardcover omnibus that collect everything over the last 15 years, and that's the main thing I'll have with me there. But then I'll have some Disavowed stuff to peek at, and maybe some stuff to sell. I'm already, starting to do sketches and stuff for it, so it's just funny because people don't know the characters yet, and it's really fun if they already do have requests for certain characters. But it's almost like, okay, which you guys want me to draw one at random, or who looks cool here, and I'll tell you about them.
Well, Mike,
it's my chance to draw them, since Pop's drawn them. I designed the characters, but Pop's drawn the book, so this is like my only chance really to draw the characters.
Hey, Mike, anything you can sneak back? Just bring it on back with you.
I was going to say the same thing. That's not, yeah, that's anything you can bring back, Mike. We'll take it. I need something to go. It's been a minute since I got a sketch from Josh, and the last one I got was Storm Shadows. So, um,
I'm always afraid to look at those because if they were like at a busy con from 20 years ago, I don't know. I'll gladly do another one.
that's said like every artist I've ever met. Um, like,
We really
why
know how
is
to
my
sell
old
ourselves.
stuff terrible? I'm like, it is not terrible. It's amazing. Uh, I can't draw worth a darn, so
Well,
I think it's all
I
pretty
do
great.
have some slots on the website now. We did a small bundle we set aside where it's like a little sketch with the few of the ash cans I have. I think there's a few slots still open. And you get one of those little mini posters. I
Awesome.
think there might be like 5 slots left or something like that.
That is not many
It's on the
slots.
Devil's Due. That's on the devilsduestudios.com or devilsdue.net.
Honestly, I wished you had never told me that some people were referring to him as Gung Hogan.
I didn't have any intention of having him look like Hulk Hogan. I just did a big mustache. It's sort of it goes back and forth, and then
big 80s
Pop
thing.
draws in with these big, yeah. But he's got. I was more focused on he's bare runs in the battle bare chested, probably all coked up. He's got 1776 on his chest. He's got a Ronald Reagan tattoo on one arm and a "Tread on me, snake. Don't tread on me, snake" on the other arm. And
A Ronald Reagan tattoo.
he shoots first and maybe asks questions later.
Oh, that's fantastic. God, that's hysterical. No, that's quite funny. Wow, that is good. So I have a question about uh, the Komodo organization because it starts off as a cult, right? Um,
Yeah,
at
kind of.
what
It's
point?
it's nebulous. Yeah.
Okay, so it's nebulous from the beginning. Okay. Because I was like, if it starts as a cult, at what point does it go from weird but mostly benign to obviously not benign? What causes that? I imagine we have to find out, and that'll be part of the fun. But um, is there a single inciting incident? Is it part of their whole charter when they're
Like with
founded?
most. So I'm deciding how much to really play into the. I think it's going to take a long time to really get into the bigger cult stories, because I want to still have fun with the absurdity of some like the over the top villain flair. But like, so during COVID, my wife and I really got into watching I don't know why there's so many cult documentaries out there, but we really went down the rabbit holes. I had already been really into like following all the Scientology stuff and I lived in Pinellas Park, Florida for a while too as a kid. So Clearwater, Florida was always in the news with that stuff. But then with like the Nixium stuff and I mean, all these shows that are out now that expose those things. There's never really it always starts with some sort of decent intention, and there always has to be something that really works about it. That's why people gravitate to it. Like the people that come in at first, they're not all morons, and they're not all crazy gullible. There's something that brings them in because it works. But then you quickly realize, like the person running this is really controlling and narcissistic, and then they start to like isolate themselves around the people that really follow them, and then from there, when it gets darker, it's all like so insulated. It's never really clear when the organization really hit the tipping point to full on like toxic cult. So that's kind of where I'm still working out. But you throw into that at some point, they get access to some weird stuff, and they start.
Well, that's the part that I wondered. Is if they're studying some esoteric thing, and then they find some artifact or whatever. I'm so on board with that kind of stuff. Those stories are great.
And then they want to protect their organization, and then they sort of get more militarized, and then at some point, money is involved, and then next thing you know, you're the secret installation somewhere in South America, defended by laser cannons. Sweet. Happens all the time.
All the time. I mean, look at the movie The Incredibles. It's right there. Uh, Syndrome has that whole place down there.
See, I'm trying to think of locations in South America that would be like really good secret hideouts.
Well, there has to be a really cool waterfall. That's just part of it. You got jungles, mountain, waterfall. Those are prerequisites for secret hideouts in South America. Of course, you could also get into some stuff in the Andes with some Amazonian stuff mixed in with like some Machu Picchu and old mummified people. The Nazca lines. Man, I could see a million different things you could do down there. I'm excited for all that.
Or there might be a place that we're not sure where it is. It's like the Springfield of South America.
That could also be that, right? Where all the Nazis went, right? Okay, so we have a question for you because one of our guys, he's like, he doesn't do horror movies. He's terrified of them, frankly. But we finally convinced him to watch Alien. And he's like, all right, that was pretty good. And then it was like, okay, Aliens 2. All right, awesome. For whatever reason, he didn't listen to us and he watched Aliens 3. And now he's really mad about it. And he wants to get your opinion on Aliens 3.
Man, this is bad. I can't remember what the hell Aliens 3 was about. Did I just black out of my mind?
Pretty much they immediately said, you know what, that doesn't exist. Right? The one where they send her off to the prison planet and then she is infected with an alien, and rather than have the alien drip out of her and kill everybody, she jumps into like off of the ledge of a volcano into the magma. And just as she's flying through the air into the lava, you see that's how the movie ends.
I remember that. I don't remember anything else about it. I probably saw it in the theater.
Was terrible
when it came out, and then never again. And
yeah,
I don't know anything. I don't know anything about Alien Romulus, by the way. Nobody spoil anything.
And then Alien 4, a lot of people didn't care for, but I actually really liked Alien 4. I thought
Alien Resurrection?
Really yeah.
You're talking about the one with Winona Ryder?
No.
Yeah. I liked that one.
No, I mean Romulus, the new.
So now that we're rid of Josh, because that's not a good movie at all. Yeah, we're going to see Alien Romulus Saturday morning, so I can't wait for that.
Was Alien Resurrection the one where by a certain time you just got it was the bad period of time where they were just using CGI for everything too much, and there's like a million aliens running around?
That was the one.
For some reason, the more
Winona Ryder and Ron Perlman, and it wasn't even Ripley. It was like a clone of Ripley.
Yeah,
Sigourney Weaver.
Because they were trying to change the way the aliens gave birth and turn them into like they gestate and give birth like humans, rather than laying eggs and such.
Man, I know I've seen these movies too. That's what's crazy is how much I don't remember about them.
I actually enjoyed that one.
Was that where the one where there was the giant queen in Resurrection? Is that the one that had the
there's a pretty big queen, because she was giving birth and it was painful and horrible. She was hating it. But yeah, I actually enjoyed that one. It got a lot of heat, but I actually enjoyed that one. I think everybody universally says Alien 3 just didn't happen. It just doesn't exist. And why you would watch that, Nick, I don't know.
For some reason, when there's more aliens, when all of a sudden the xenomorphs, when there's like 100 of them, they're not as scary. But if there's one stalking around, it's terrifying.
I thought Alien was a great horror movie. Aliens was a great action movie. Right?
Yeah.
And then Prometheus and Covenant, they're just on a freaking entirely different level. I love those two.
They're like on a different planet.
Yeah.
Mentally.
See, I just thought those were weird, and I didn't like the way they were like proto-humanoid. We are just amazing. They felt very
being the geek that I know you are for the other ancient history mystery stuff. What they really should have been was the giant skull dudes, like the Paracas skulls.
That would have made so much more sense.
It would have. tie it into something that's like a real mystery that, and who cares what's real about it, what's not. They could have tapped into that, and then you and me and 5 other people that know that would have been like, yes.
Right. But that would have made sense, right? That draws on something, and there's a tie, and why they've got the funky heads and the whole 9 yards. That would have all made sense to me. So
I did watch. Sorry, I keep cutting off a little delay.
No, you're good.
But I mean, as weird as that was, and I was like, I don't. Some of it I loved. Some of it I was like, oh man, I get frustrated when they don't explain certain things. Although that's really Scott's intention not to. I did turn around and watch all of Raised by Wolves, and I totally dug that, as bizarre as it is.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen that.
It's bizarre. You're not wrong.
It is really. I mean, it's really weird by the last season, the last episode that aired.
But it's also hard to not. It's like hard to turn away from it too. You're like, I need to see how that turned out.
I think you're like, does he really have any idea what the hell this story, like where this story is going? Oh, that's what the real mystery is. Does he know what the hell he's even doing, or is he just making it up every episode?
It's a legitimate question, but it's
that's a bigger mystery than the characters are dealing with.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. But man, we appreciate you sticking with us. I know it's been a long evening here, but thank you so much for sticking with us. It's great talking to you. Always good talking with you. Really looking forward to Disavowed coming out, because I'm so excited for this premise. I'm excited to see you back to a book like this in this vein, but mixing in all those things. And I love your concept of just leaning into it, owning it, and putting it out there and saying, here it is. This is what it is, and love it and pick it up, or hate it and leave it, whatever you do. But you're going to have a reaction to it. I think that's awesome.
Hey, thanks for having me back. And I hope everybody I wanted to just have fun with it.
Alan, you got any final questions before we let this man go?
Nope. What you got?
Other than that, again, like check out there's the Facebook fan group. Hopefully you guys could link that in the video. It's the Disavowed comic fan group. I had some Facebook issues, so make sure you follow the right one. And then there's I'm on Instagram as Blaylock Comics. I'm on Twitter as Josh Blaylock. You could follow the Devils Do Comics Facebook page. Follow Massive on all the socials. And follow that Backer Kid page to get those updates. And we will harass the shit out of you when it launches. We'll let you know.
I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be participating. Just make sure you've got a good retailer level.
Absolutely.
Retailers on there, because we'll support it that way. That way I get my personals, and the store gets them for folks who weren't able to back it. Because we've got a pretty... You can tell I'm a sucker for G.I. Joe. Anytime somebody brings in a collection for sale, if it's got G.I. Joe in it, I'm pretty much going to buy it.
Especially now.
Well, I mean, I've always been that way. I've just always been a sucker for it. Also, if it has an X-Men 133 in it, it was the very first comic book I ever read, was X-Men 133, Wolverine Alone Against the Hellfire Club. And I got it out of a sack full of books at a yard sale when I was 8 years old. But I see that in there. There's just like this Catcher in the Rye thing in my head that I have to buy this now. It's just what I have to do. I'm programmed to have to buy it. But I pick that stuff up and I love it, and it makes me happy. And we've got a lot of G.I. Joe fans. I think stores have personalities of their own, and the things that they're really passionate about, people who are also passionate about it kind of gravitate toward that. So we've got a pretty high G.I. Joe readership at the shop, and we like to get on here and talk about the last issue that came out and all the things that are happening in it. Speaking of which, the Destro number 3 came out yesterday, and boy, that is good stuff. Really, really
I haven't
exciting.
seen it yet.
Yeah, you kind of got a cameo of this new character, Chameleon, in the last issue, in number 2, and you get to see a lot more of her in this issue, and she is not somebody to mess with. clearly. So that's pretty great to see. Actually, it did remind me. I did have one other question for you. I'm going to assume, and you tell me if I'm wrong. When you had your run of the book, you created new characters like Zanya, right? Um, and you have the rights to those characters and all that. That's not something that Hasbro owns, or how does that work?
Oh no, they own that stuff. They totally own that. Yeah,
Do they?
that's why there's been like 20 Kamakura toys. Oh no, they don't. They don't even send you the toys, or I don't even. It's a weird thing with. Oh, there he is. Yeah, they did such a good fucking job on him, man. He is lifted from the page.
This is one of my favorite toys out of the
Wait.
entire classified line.
Look how badass that toy is, right? And look how goofy.
Oh,
The only ninja ever marketed ever in G.I. Joe history without his mask.
The whole.
I call this ginger kick.
Well,
I mean, they got that
you're
on the
not
side.
wrong.
But the toy, man, I mean, that meant a lot. Like, I designed that character from scratch, and they pretty much literally took it straight from the page. It's
right
really
off
well
the page. I wondered about that if they owned it or if you did. So maybe we'll get a Zanya action figure in the classified line. I'd be totally cool with that.
Yeah, you know what I do have is
as long as you're getting paid for it.
So somebody made this custom. Did a great job. They took some wrestling action figure.
And that's cool.
Yeah,
I love the packaging and everything too, though. That's great.
Yeah, they did an awesome job there. But yeah, you know, since she's only ever gotten that one toy, and I think I mean it's a fan. That's like a San Diego Con exclusive hit toy or something waiting to happen. The second they make it, people will jump all over it. Because I mean that one back there really does go for like I think these are like $400 for that Dreadnought set.
I've never seen it go cheaply. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. But I mean, I knew getting into it, you know, that's why I didn't create a ton of characters. I focused more on updating characters. So you got stuff like, it's funny, one of the simplest things I ever did was just the shipwreck design and getting him out of the bell bottoms and putting him more like the sailor, like the knit cap and the sweater.
Yep.
I'm surprised that's existed. They kept that, and he's been used in every iteration pretty much since. Has kept that.
Yep.
Snake Eyes. I just basically took the 87 version. Only thing is I gave him little like Batman utility belt capsules on his arm, and I put the Rashikage shoulder on the sleeve, which I don't think anyone that had never been really displayed like that before. And then they started doing that on everything. So there was like things like that, but I created Kamakura and Zanya, Mr. Sarmata, Alexander McCullen, a few others I'm sure I'm forgetting. And then we had, you know, Brandon Jerwa bringing in a lot of characters like General Ray and Wraith and a lot of other stuff. So, which most of those things have all been made into some kind of toys, at least for exclusives or something. But you know, when you get those, you know, they hear stories about creators fighting with Marvel or DC over this stuff for things they did 20, 30, 40 years ago. At least there, the Marvel makes the comic books. That's where the IP comes from. The Warner, you know, DC is where the stories come from, and everyone knows that. Even the top of the top executive level of Warner Brothers gets that intuitively. When it's a license of a toy property, it's just some rando. They in their head, it's like this disassociated thing of these random people on the side making stories to sell merchandise for their IP that comes from the toys, and all that stuff's just like secondary. Even though in reality, it's where everything is coming from. It is because they don't have anything else. It's where the stories are really coming from, but they don't think about it that way. So there's even more of a disconnect with a toy company and those stories than in any conscious awareness of like, hey, we should really think of the creators that made this stuff. Larry had to fight really hard for years to get, recognized on it, or less. At least they just kind of finally came around to it. Yeah, I've been told that like I could probably go complain and get some, I don't know. Marvel does the thing where they get shut up money. Or in DC, they give they don't legally have to give the creators something, but they always just take care of them. DC is really known for doing a good job with that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And everyone seems, most people seem happy with it. But they also got to make some movies that do well enough that I have a right to bitch.
That's very true. That's very true. It's like there are bits and pieces from those movies that are great, and then there's these bits where they were like, "Who came up with that? Like, why did you do that? You just turned this silly."
I will say since we're talking about it, but I really don't. I don't sit around dwelling on this stuff, but that Snake Eyes movie I went and see it by myself because I didn't know anyone else at the time. Not that not like everyone, no one had seen it yet. I didn't have friends like shitting on it, but I just didn't know anyone right away that wanted to see it. I wanted to make sure I got there like the first week, and I just went and saw it by myself. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking the whole time I was excited of all the marketing really was showing off the comic book stuff. Like they were literally showing, at least on my Instagram feed, like flipping through comic book pages and stuff, and all the interviews we're talking about, Larry having a cameo and everything in it. I was like, they finally got it. They're gonna relaunch this whole franchise from how interconnected through Snake Eyes, and then clearly watching it was like, oh, the marketing of the comic book was because they were like, we need to make a Marvel comic book movie. It says like because Marvel is cool and Marvel comes from comics. Oh, hey, we have a comic. That's kind of like the level of thought I think that went into some of that. And then they did fortunately bring in a lot more of the real origins that come from Larry's books and everything that he developed, except for what we talked about already with like they completely betray the characters' like morality. Yep. But I'm watching it and I'm seeing like, holy crap, this is Arashikage's showdown with the Arashikage protecting this device that's been kept by them for centuries. And this is a manga that I did, like a kind of a one-off manga. We did a sort of a fun little test thing, not really part of the regular continuity. Maybe we sold 10,000 copies. Like it really flew under the radar, but clearly the screenwriters got that in their source material, and triggered an idea with somebody. And when they said, when Storm Shadow tells Snake Eyes, oh, that was given to us by the sun goddess, I just was sitting there by myself. Like no one, what? That's the story. So then, they'd already used the nanomites in the first movie. And that's when there was more salt in the wound with that because we lost the license and then they literally used my plot in the movie and they were kind of like being really kind of insulting about could we even handle this book with all the movie hype. So it was worse than not getting acknowledged. It was kind of like getting like a middle finger. This one was more like so unexpected. Like what? It's just so I'm like in this theater, like almost empty theater, which on a weekday. Like that's you're the guy. I'm the guy in the corner, like in the meme where he's like, they don't know that I blah 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 that I did this, and they're all at the party.
Yep. That has to be surreal. That's just got to be absolutely surreal. I can't imagine sitting there like, well, I did that. I did that, hey, guys.
and it's like I expected that to be a movie like everything pulled from like the Larry Hama pages, for a third of the movie to be from even out of all the stuff that I wrote or all the stuff Devil's Due published. I mean, the hundreds of books. This manga story that like almost nobody read is what it was pulled from. That was just weird. So, I might have a whole different opinion of the movie if I'd gotten a nice little like $30,000 shut up check.
Well, make sure for any future movies that we get that for you. But yeah, no, dude, I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us. Always awesome to talk to you. You've got just such a depth of knowledge about so many wide and varied things. It's always a joy to talk to you. Really appreciate having you on, man.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for having me back, and hopefully you come back again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll see dude in Tucson.
There you go. Yeah, you'll see Mike out in Tucson. He'll get a Mercy Sparks from you, I'm sure. And everybody, stay cool. Read some more comics. Sign up for the Disavowed at the store. We're going to go ahead and open up our pre-orders on our sub list for it, so you can sign up for it now while it's fresh on your minds. Make sure if you're not local to Huntsville that you tell your LCS that this is coming and that they need to carry it. Kind of important. So make sure that they do that. And guys, we'll catch you all next time. We're going to play our outro here, and we'll see y'all next week.
Later.